One coat of white. Everybody knows by this time that we first met Lotus on shipboard, but few people know that in the beginning, Betsy, my wife, and I had no idea who he was. We were on the Queen Elizabeth, coming back from our trip to Europe. It was on the second day that I ran into him sitting in a quiet corner on deck. He gave me a nasty look. I started to back away, apologizing, but suddenly his expression changed. "Wait," he cried, "you're an American?" His English was good, and he asked me if I had a moment to help him with a small problem. He wanted to know the name of some United States senator for the ship's daily crossword puzzle. The definition was senator who crosses a river. I saw the Senator Bridge. There was a Miss Aslan Bridge on board. I didn't see him until next day when he came up to me and whispered, "Look." In his big hand, he was holding a man's wallet made of pigskin. "The prize," he said. "See what I've won. But for you, though, I would have never solved the puzzle. Come, have a cocktail with me." We were sitting, drinking, and talking, and finally he asked me if I could keep a secret. And then he said, "I'm Lotus." I told Betsy all about it, so after lunch, we talked to the ship's librarian, asked him a few innocent questions, and then dropped the name Lotus. We were greatly impressed by what we heard. We found out that my new friend was probably the world's greatest living painter, but he had given up painting and was heard to say that he would never touch another brush as long as he lived. Well, we got to be real friendly. He planned to spend a month in New York, and it was Betsy who suggested that he came up to our place just for a weekend. Lotus arrived on the noon train Saturday, and I met him at the station. Driving out from the station, I asked him if he wanted to do anything in particular, and he said that he just wanted to sit and relax. I was up at 7:30 the next morning, and when I was having breakfast, I remembered a job I had been putting off for some time. Our vegetable garden had a white fence, which I built with my own hands 5 years ago. That garden fence is my pride, and now it needed a fresh coat of paint. I wanted to do the job. I got out a bucket full of white paint and a brush. While I was getting things ready, I heard footsteps. I took up the brush, but he suddenly seized it from my hand and said, "First, I show you." I argued with him, but he didn't want to look up from his work. He spent 3 hours at it and finished the fence, all 4 sections of it. He went back to town on the 9 o'clock train that evening. He said he hadn't enjoyed himself so much in years. We didn't hear anything from him or about him for 10 days. Then New York papers got hold of the story. In the interview Lotus gave, there were a few lines about the weekend he had spent with Mr. and Mrs. Gregg. The day after the story appeared, a reporter and a photographer from one of the papers arrived at our place. Of course, Betsy told them about the fence. They took a lot of pictures of the fence. The next morning, the paper had a story. The headline said, "Lotus paints again." People started arriving at large numbers. They asked me if I knew that a single painting by Lotis was worth as much as $250,000. The next day, Gersten, the sculptor, came to see us. He asked me not to sell the fence yet and let the Palmer Museum in New York exhibit it for several weeks. He also explained what all the excitement was about. He said one reason was that Lotis had never before used a bit of white paint. The fence was taken to New York. I went down myself to have a look, and I couldn't help laughing when I saw my fence. It had a fence around it. The exhibition was to end on Saturday, and Gersten phoned and asked if I would meet him at the museum on Sunday. He led me to the room where my fence had been exhibited, and I did get a shock when I came in. The fence had been cut up into sections. Last night, Gersten said, Lotis came here, get down on his hands and knees, and signed each of the 30 sections. Now you've got something to sell, he said, smiling. And indeed, I did have. 29 sections of the 30 sections were sold within a month's time at $10,000 each. I kept the 13th for myself. It is hanging now in our living room.